And welcome to In the 661 Youth Voices for Kern, where we talk about issues facing our community, particularly issues that are of interest to the youth in our community. Sofia Garcia is with the Dolores Huerta Foundation. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Of course, we've got a very meaty topic, I would say,
yes,
to kind of try and delve into, and this is the Kern High School District and the redistricting that is set to take place.
Yes.
To kind of give the short synopsis, though, there was a prior lawsuit that was brought against the county in terms of the supervisorial seats.
Yes.
The county lost that lawsuit and is now in the process of trying to figure out the maps. And in order to head off facing a similar lawsuit, the Kern High School District has decided they're going to do that voluntarily.
Yes,
right?
They've been proactive.
So that kind of gets us to the conversation today, which is Dolores Huerta Foundation's participation in this discussion. Tell me about where you guys land on this and what you want to see happen.
Yes, so we have been active throughout the entire process. We were there at the first meeting in March. Dr. Gerald Cantu and I presented our maps on Monday. We gave a 15-minute presentation about not only our proposed maps, but also the process in which we created them. So we went over redistricting best practices to let the public know how this process works, and we gave them in the order that we wanted to present. So equal population was the #1 thing we looked at, so the data. Then we looked at compactness, contiguity, which is really just similar shapes and making sure the districts touch one another. And then the other two big ones were looking at political subdivisions, so cities and places. And then another interesting one is communities of interest. So we looked at not only the Latino community, the Sikh community, but also a community that is the Dolores Huerta Foundation works with, which is building healthy communities.
And we're going to talk about, and I should probably back this up a little bit, because I failed to mention part of the main thrust of the lawsuit was that the supervisorial districts split up Latino communities, thus reducing their power when it came to voting, because they were in one district on this side and another district on this side. And that's the same question that we're having when we're talking about the Kern High School District.
Exactly.
So now when we're talking about this map, I mean, you were just kind of telling me that you were considering not just Latinos, but a whole holistic approach of kind of different things that you want to see happen. Tell me about this map, because you were saying places, cities, and also the BHC.
Yes, so the BHC is building healthy communities. So it's a network of different groups here in South Kern. So we can see Greenfield, Lamont, Arvin. So it encompasses this entire area. So when we were creating our maps, we wanted to be really cognizant of where this area lies, and when Building Healthy Communities presents issues to the Kern High School District Board specifically, they can come as one voice. So we put them all here in District 3, and that was something that we actively worked with. And again, this is, while we're here again for the Latino issue, we also looked at various communities. We can also see in the current maps, the city of Rosedale is split up into 3 different boundaries. 3 trustees actually live within 3 miles of one another.
I think we're going to show that on the next map. That's
thing.
one of the big questions that criticisms, I would say, about the Kern High School District trustees currently is that the trustee who's overseeing Lamont doesn't live near Lamont and lives in a different area. So when we're looking at this map, you're saying they're clustered almost all together where they live.
Yes, so we can see here the current boundaries, and these are where the current 3 trustees live, and they live within 3 miles of one another. So this is the community of Rosedale, and actually we calculated that these 3 districts, District 1, 3, and 4, have a combined square miles of over 2,500 miles, yet they live in 3 miles of one another. So we really have to ask the question, how can 3 trustees, or 2/3 of the Kern High School District Board, which is the largest high school district in California, how can that really make sense? And so when we're creating our maps, incumbency is best practice that we can look into, but traditionally it's the thing that is the least important. And so when presenting our maps, that's exactly how we did it. So we have actually all 3 of these trustees in one district for our proposed maps.
So I want to talk to you about that in a second. I mean, I understand the trustee who represents Lamont, who doesn't live close to Lamont, has said, look, I still am interested in their needs and wants. Let me ask you this question out of kind of as a devil's advocate. Does a person have to live within Lamont to be representative, right? Because there is a question that people say, I don't have to be a gay person to understand the plights that a person who's gay might be. I don't have to be black to understand or sympathize with some of the struggles that black people face in this country. So do I have to live in Lamont in your mind when you're making maps in order for me to really represent that area?
Yeah, so sort of what we were thinking, again, we didn't even really take into account where incumbents live. That was last on our list. So again, we followed the best practices, looked at the equal population, looked at the community. So in our mind, we were thinking Rosedale's a community. So Rosedale can have one trustee for their entire community. So we didn't even really look at whether you're Latino or black or gay or straight.
Or living in Lamont.
Or living in Lamont.
But you did try and keep Lamont all in one area so that the trustee would be somewhat in that vicinity.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. So again, the two biggest things is keeping the communities in mind and then also the data. So during our presentation, we not only talked about population data, CVAP data, which is citizen voting age population data, but also looked at voter turnout and voter registration.
And so let's talk about that map, because you guys drew maps. It's not the same map that the current high school district drew. Explain to me your map first, and then explain to me how it differs from the current high school district map.
Okay, so what we see here is we have our current, or the boundaries that we're proposing, and in the bright pink are the places, so the different communities. You can see Rosedale, Oildale, Lamont, and then we have Arvin, the Greenfield community, and the Seat community. So what we tried to do was preserve communities and keep them intact. So we have Oildale is completely intact, along with Rosedale, Lamont, Greenfield, the Seat community. And then we also looked at geographic boundaries, so we can see that District 3 is split off by some highways. So again, our biggest stuff for us were the geographic boundaries communities, but also we were looking at Latino effectiveness. So can District 2 and District 3 effectively turn out a Latino person to run? And so the data, when we looked at our data versus the current data, we have two consistent Latino majorities in District 2 and 3, and that's across the board.
And the district map is different from yours. Are they going to take yours into consideration? Do you think they'll eventually accept this one, or will there be some kind of discussion and a mix between the two?
Yeah, so when we were looking at the map, so Monday was when we presented to the board, and also their maps were presented to us as well. We saw that there wasn't a lot of change with the current maps. We really saw that the demographers seem to say that all of the incumbents remain in their districts. And so with that, it's really difficult to look at population to make two Latino effective districts when you have those three trustees living 3 miles from one another. So the DHF was actually a little disappointed to see that they held so much weight on keeping incumbents in place. Whereas we flipped it and again showed the public and the board our best practices in the list that we created them. So again, we're looking forward to further conversation, and the DHF will be there on Monday to make a public comment, and hopefully we'll hear what they have to say about our maps as well.
So let's talk a little bit about how the district is going to use data, which I understand is only census data from 2010.
Right.
How will that affect, do you think, the final outcome of the boundaries of the map they eventually draw?
Right. So we really aren't sure. Like I'm not an attorney. I don't do law, so we're not particularly sure if they need to use 2010 data. So we presented our maps with 2016 data, but we're actually in the process of creating similar maps using 2010 data because we believe that they could have created 2 effective Latino districts in 2010. So we're hoping to propose another set of maps. But again, if we were looking at 2010 data and we're back in 2010 and had a blank slate, there would be no question that Rosedale would only have 1 incumbent. So I think that's something that we also are thinking about. And again, we're looking forward to see what the public comment is on Monday.
Well, there's a lot of questions and comments right now and national controversy swirling around the upcoming census. You, I would imagine, would feel it's important to everyone be counted for that 2020 census to get a realistic and data-driven picture of who's living in Kern County.
Yes, yeah. So we, as the DHF, again, encourage everyone to fill out and complete the census because the accurate counts of census data will be beneficial for the entire Kern County. Not only does it give funds for infrastructure, school, parks, buildings, but also, again, we're going to be using that data for redistricting not only Kern High School District, but also the Board of Supervisors. So we really encourage people, and we're actually going to be actively working to help people fill out the census completely.
And you guys use GIS. Can you explain kind of very briefly that to help develop these maps? What is GIS?
Yes. So GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. It basically means mapping and data, or another way of looking at it is how to tell stories using numbers and data. And so there's a lot of different platforms. Esri is an international partner that we're actually working with that has this software for nonprofits and also businesses. And we're actually we got an invitation just yesterday to present at the Esri UC, which is an international conference with GIS professionals. And so DHF is sort of an industry leader in a nonprofit in GIS.
And so when you're drawing these maps and then talking to the county, how is the conversation? As you mentioned, there was kind of some discussion in public already, but how is the discussion going? Is there any sense that your position on not splitting up Lamont and drawing the districts in the way that you've drawn them will be what is eventually adopted? Are they open to the discussion, so to speak?
We haven't had any formal discussions, but we are, again, looking forward to what they say on Monday. And then we also heard Mike Williams mentioned on Monday that he wanted to have whatever maps they were going to adopt not really have minimal changes in 2020. And so we actually completely agree with that, because we are confident that our maps, if they adopt them, will not have many changes in 2020.
Because eventually there could be another push from what I'm hearing you say, there would be a push if these maps were not representative in 2020 again to then have them redrawn.
Exactly. They have to look at it again in 2020.
And so if all this comes to pass, when will there be potentially a new election and potentially new trustees in these positions?
I think from my understanding, they're trying to finish this by mid-May, so they can have an election in November. And I'm not really sure which trustees are up for election, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Because I ask this because there's a similar conversation going with the county and the supervisors. There's some people who were up for re-election a couple of years who were actually facing that reality.
Yeah.
And again, it's possible, right, that a trustee would move into a different area and potentially still represent that district if they decided to move. They could run again.
Yeah, but again, our focus here is to look at redistricting best practices and to present the public a way that we have been creating our maps, and that really focusing in on industry standards. And then if it happens that 3 trustees are going to be in one district, that's for the benefit of the community. Again, we're looking at not only the communities of Lamont, Arvin, Greenfield, but making 2 effective districts and then keeping those communities of interest together.
And you mentioned too, Sikh community, not just the Latino community, but other communities of color and other communities in general, cities, kind of keeping cities together.
Exactly, yeah. So the community of Rosedale right now is split up into 3. The community of Oildale is split up into 2. Lamont is split up right down the middle. The Sikh community, we have taken them into account because they're a partner that we work with. So again, it's not just a Latino issue. It's not just one issue. It's for how can the current high school district, again, the biggest high school district in California, how can it be equally represented? And we don't believe that, again, 2/3 of the power should remain in Rosedale.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on In the 661.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us as well on In the 661 Youth Voices for Kern.